and welcome back to Artist on Art. I am your host, Nada Milkovich. I have the great pleasure to be speaking with the next DANMite in our series of DANMites. I'm so excited. The next month, I'm going to get to talk to everybody that's graduating, and Dan Heler is here in the house talking about his work, and thank you so much for coming up, Dan.
You're very welcome.
So Dan, again, is a digital arts and new media graduating senior from the 2-year MFA program. It is the grueling process that it is, and I thank you, Dan, for taking out time. And probably one of the most stressful times of my life was the last quarter of getting my MFA here in Danham. How are you feeling?
You got a degree in Danham?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I did not know that. I'm sorry for not doing my homework.
So funny. Dan's an interesting guy. You're a photographer.
I am.
And you're helping blind people take pictures.
No, I was part of a project that was oriented around not helping blind people take pictures, but helping them catalog the pictures that they take. So giving them keywords or narrative descriptions and putting them into an archive format that they would then be able to retrieve or to share with other people.
Oh, that's great. And you also do it with sound effects.
Well, my particular art project involves sound, so it would, to some degree, mimic the experience that a blind person might have in that they hear what's around them, but they don't see it. And so when they take a picture of something, they would describe it or use keywords based on what they believe they are seeing or where they believe they may be. So if you as a sighted person were to try to mimic that and then open your eyes and see what you're actually seeing, you might be surprised, just as a blind person might be surprised. So with the exhibit that I am showing this spring, is you hear sound effects, you describe where you might be and the pictures you might be taking, and then a Google search is done based on the description you just gave and images from around the world that happen to match that description, or at least the way Google thinks it matches the description, which is largely derived from the descriptions that people themselves used when they characterized the picture. So you get a lot of variety of results. Some of them are clearly accidental, but then somebody may take a picture of a bunch of sheep, but because they happen to be in Monument Valley, they would call the picture Monument Valley, just because it's part of a series that they took. So Google doesn't know that it's sheep, it just goes by what they describe it. So once in a while you get some, exceptions like that. But for the most part, once you see the pictures from your description and then you reconnect that with the description that you gave, it's really a surprising thing.
That's very interesting. And so is your piece an installation piece? Or
yes.
Something that you interact with?
Right. It's entirely voice-driven. So nobody touches anything. You don't see a computer. There's just a very large screen and a microphone. And so prompts tell you what to do or what to say or what to listen to. And, of course, there's help, a series of help that gives you information not just about the exhibit and the art piece, but the theory behind all of this and so forth. So
would you mind just giving us a few of your sources, Dan Heler, into the theory behind describing sounds? I mean, this is a whole new thing that you've created, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if I would say that. I mean, when you said the background, so in art theory, we talk about artists are very interested in philosophical foundations for certain frames of thought, and we express these thoughts in works of art. So we derive some of our basic fundamental thinking and belief on some of these philosophical foundations. Some of those philosophies, for example, comes from the realist movement, where we interpret the world based on the real senses that we take in: touch, sound, sight, and so forth.
Phenomenological.
Correct. And then there's other philosophical thoughts like rationalism, which we interpret the world based on our reason. So we hear all this basic input, and then we create symbolic references, and we derive new information about the world and so forth. All these things happen simultaneously as we experience the world, as the arrow of time moves forward. This exercise that my project is about asynchronicity. What would we do? How do we interpret the world if we were to take in all these various inputs asynchronously, not at the same time? Would we form an opinion once, then form it again later, then form it again another time, as each of these senses are triggered by different kinds of stimulus at different points in time? So the real artistic foundation here is a study of asynchronicity of different theories of philosophy. So putting them into a tangible framework, which is what I call art. Art, in my definition, everybody has their own. My definition of art is a point of view expressed in a tangible form.
A point of view expressed in a tangible form. I'm going to have to think about this for a second. So I have this idea, a point of view, right, and somehow there is a physical representation of that I can touch, that I can see, that I can somehow register through my senses of the body.
Correct. So philosophy really is your point of view, but it has not yet been expressed. Once you put it down into some form that you can communicate to someone else, that piece of tangible material becomes a work of art.
So then if I act in a way that is the expression of my philosophy, is that also,
Well, that's what I call sort of the horizon point. It is artistic, but it is not a work of art until you can solidify it into a particular framework. So a choreography, for example. And by the way, a good point of reference to think about this is in the law of copyright. Copyright law is when copyright law protects a work that is in a fixed and tangible form. So if you use that kind of as a cognitive reference point, you can think of choreography can be copyrighted if you can show the physical steps, and it is the same every single time. You can do the same thing with the written word, with photography, with any kind of artistic media format. But until you put it into that form, it is still in a more abstract philosophical state.
So what about people that believe in life as art?
Well,
they're living their lives
right
as their philosophical, artistic inspiration.
Right. This is similar to
Alan Capro.
Right. This is similar to a definition of art that's often used in professional services. For example, the art of science, the art of law, a term of art, for example. So there is an art to many kinds of practices, the practice of art.
Yes.
So
I believe that strongly.
So there is a spectrum of which we form an idea, it stays abstract, and that as it becomes a fixed piece,
practice,
if becomes a fixed piece, you go through the practice of mastering a particular technique in order to put it into that form.
All right.
So sort of artistic ways and the art of things is sort of that amorphous mechanism, that embryonic state before it becomes something in a fixed, and that is now my piece kind of thing. Even though the piece can still evolve, it can have its early forms, you can take it at any point in this evolutionary point and put a stamp on it and say, okay, now it's a fixed form. But in the process of painting the brush or crafting the stroke or typing the words, the piece, you could call it at any given time a fixed piece of point of view in an artistic form, but generally an artist would like to get it to a particular point where it reflects their philosophical point of view about that thing.
Right on. Dan Heler, giving it to us. I love it. I'm glad you brought up copyright because you're also the director up here of a center. Is that correct?
Well, I was. I'm no longer.
Did you begin the Center
yes,
for the Entrepreneurship?
Correct. I founded the Center for Entrepreneurship here at UC Santa Cruz.
And it's dedicated to supporting education and research.
Correct.
And entrepreneurship, enhancing the innovative capabilities of UCSC's faculty and students, and promoting an entrepreneurial use of on-campus innovations for wider societal benefits. This is kind of your, would you say this is your background work before you came back to school to get your MFA?
Yes, it very much was. It is actually what I've lovingly called my middle years between my academic foundations and which followed by my professional career, and then came my middle years, and now I'm at I just turned 50 in case you are at the home or playing the home game. So it is really taking the aggregate of my experiences in life, both in practice and in theory and in academics, and putting it to a use that I think is more beneficial to society. I'm fortunate enough to have benefited myself in my early careers, and through those benefits, it has enabled me to try to benefit and give back to society.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so do you see yourself doing this in the future as an educator, as a startup helper kind of guy?
And both, yes.
And that would be your art practice?
Well, there is an art to business.
Yes.
There is an art to...
Art business.
Right. There's an art to everything. And I think that to draw upon what I just said about applying those things that I've derived, you know, the world is not so black and white, and in order to do anything, no matter what its end game, there is an art to doing it. There is a practice. It is not just a algorithm where you do particular steps in order and therefore you achieve it. Even in the sciences, the art of science involves finding a very new and different, unique direction, and which is the case with business and law and society and politics. So my current activity right now is I am getting my MFA, and I do wish to teach, and I have developed courses. I developed 3 courses in entrepreneurship that I did teach here last year and the year before. I do hope to teach courses in the business and economics of the arts for artists, not for business majors or economic majors.
Hallelujah, Dan. Your words bring warmth to my heart. It is a very difficult thing for an artist who has a different mindset in kind of general terms to make it as a business owner and to think of it as in those terms. You have to be a business person to make it as an artist.
Well, I don't disagree, but I would refine that to say it takes a point of view that is different than what artists typically have. Artists want to be appreciated for their artwork, and very much they should be, but the real world doesn't necessarily accommodate that vision. Sometimes you have to achieve a different goal before you can get that goal to be supported.
Right. And so to have somebody kind of lay out what are all the different steps or, you know, the model of...
People basically very much believe that business is antithetical to the arts. They're almost anti-business. And
well, you're selling out.
Yeah, but what does, in fact, selling out mean? Now, that's a very long discussion. We don't need to get into that. But there's different aspects to how do you make yourself better visible, yourself, not necessarily your work. You can attach yourself to causes that you believe in or other kinds of social groups and so forth, and through your activities with them, your art may become more visible, for example. This is an entrepreneurial and, dare I say it, business kind of thinking. How can I leverage different resources in my environment to further my personal goals of the arts. And really, the arts is really furthering a personal vision and point of view that you would like to see put forth.
That's wonderful, Dan. Thank you so much. Dan Heler, telling us the business of the art of business art. Business art.
It's circular.
It is circular. And Dan will be showing his piece. What do you call the piece?
It's called Hear, Say, See.
Hear, Say, See will be at the Digital Arts Research Center at UCSC on April 27th through 28th, plus the next weekend, May 2nd through the 5th. He will be joining the works with John Patrick Asen, Derek Franz, Jacob Garb, Catalina Giraldo, Andrew Siller, Laura Wright, and then the previous guest, Eve Warnock. There's 8 of you that are graduating, and there's a whole lot of things happening. The first weekend is a soft opening. The dark will be open from 10 to 4, and you'll be giving artist tours.
April 27th or 6th?
27th and 28th, and then it's in conjunction with the Alumni Weekend. And then the big opening, the hard opening, is May 2nd. The reception is from 8 to 10 in the dark. And there will also be a lecture by Will Wright from 6 to 7 in the Media Theater, 6 to 7:30, excuse me. And then May 3rd and May 4th and May 5th, the dark hours are going to be 10 to 4. Again, there'll be artist tours. There'll be a First Friday storefront pop-up gallery in the Rittenhouse building downtown from 6 to 7. That'll be May 3rd. And then you'll be able to basically run around the dark and see the different installations. Where will be your installation, Dan Heler?
In 108B. 108 is the main dark room, and mine is the small room in the doors behind it. And behind it means kind of in front of it, at the back of the theater, but it's right behind the front doors to the whole building.
Right.
You won't have a problem seeing it.
Yeah, you just go through the doors. As soon as you walk in, you'll be able to see it. Dan Heler, thank you so much for coming up today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate, again, your time during this could be stressful period.